Now I want to get some responses from you. What would you say right now, regardless of how long you've been in Premier, what do you appreciate most about your Premier business? What do you appreciate most?
Friends.
Okay, friends. What else? Outreach. Tell me in what way? What do you mean?
You're able to outreach people's needs, and my reason was really fundraising.
Okay.
Mission, and I could never give anything that I raise in the 50% that goes to Premier. I could never ever be able to do what Premier does for people.
Okay, so you like the fact that through your business you're able to outreach. So in other words, through your association with Premier, you're a part of all of those ministries that Premier is supporting, because that's part of what makes Premier work. So it's a way for us to have a much greater reach. Okay, anything else? We've had friends, we've got outreach. What else? Say it again. A work from home mom. See, and I'm a real proponent of that phrase. I used to call myself a stay-at-home mom when I was early on in Premier, but I'd get really frustrated because, you know, I got these friends who are stay-at-home moms, and you know, they've got greater flexibility. They're going and doing more, and I'm thinking, you know, that really frustrates me. Not that they're getting to do that, but I was setting a standard for myself that I could not meet. I had to get to that place where I realized, you know, if I were not working Premier at home with my kids, I would be working a job for someone else, and I would have less flexibility, less freedom. And so really, in effect, what I started telling myself and what I started calling myself is I'm a work from home mom, because I needed to set the stage for people. You know, I don't have unlimited time for everything that you want to put on my plate. I actually work, and that work requires time. So I like that you said it in that way, and I think it's very liberating for people who are in Premier to realize you have to ask yourself, why are you in Premier? Because if there's even a smallest portion of why you're in Premier is to meet a financial need, then working Premier should not be an option for you. Okay, we shouldn't be waking up if there's even the smallest financial need in your household, then we can't wake up saying, I have the option to not work my business. We should wake up with, I need to work, because if I didn't have Premier, I would be working for someone else who would not give me the option to just kind of hang out at the house and do nothing. So, and that's one of the great challenges of Premier, is that because we work for ourselves, we also have the ability to talk to ourselves and to give ourselves options that we otherwise would not have. Options like, I think I'll sleep a little bit longer today. I think I won't make those calls today because I don't really feel like it. I don't think I will put makeup on and put jewelry on and go out and meet new people because I don't really want to do that. We can give ourselves options, whereas when you work for someone else, most of the time, they give you parameters on what you're going to wear, when you're going to show up, how long you're going to be there, what you get paid, what you have to do. And do you know that there are a ton of people who work jobs where they are given a quota every day for making cold calls? Like that is their job, is to be on the phone nonstop. And do you know what? They don't sit there at their desk and tell their boss, I'm afraid of the phone. I just can't bring myself to pick up the phone and to make these calls. No, they're not saying that. Why? Because they're being paid to do it. Yet we will give ourselves the out as though it's okay to give ourselves permission not to get on the phone or not to call people that we otherwise would not want to call, because we don't have a boss who's writing that check for our payment telling us, I'm sorry, dear, you're going to have to do it anyway if you want to work here. So it's interesting how some of the times what is great about what we have can also be a challenge in what we have. Would you agree with that? Like, things that are great about what we have can be a challenge about what we have. Okay, did anybody else have something that they really appreciate about Premier that they, it's burning in your belly to share?
It's not burning in my belly to share, but the trips that we have the opportunity to earn.
Yes,
awesome.
The trips are awesome. So for those who might not be, That's right. That for those not necessarily associated with Premier that might be watching, when you're in Premier, as with most other companies like what we have, you have the ability to earn incentive trips, as a leader. And so Premier just had 2. Some folks went to San Diego. Some folks went to Washington, D.C. That's where Fred and I went. And oh my goodness, we were on Facebook a lot, having a lot of fun. He and I were just talking about that yesterday, about how much fun we had in D.C. Everything from walking to biking to Fred was out in the middle of the protest that was happening out there. We had a great time on that trip, and being able to connect with people is one of the best things about those kinds of trips. So I agree. I think that's a really good point. In the early days of Premier, we were able to do so much, even with not making a lot of money, because we were able to earn these trips. And then, you're only out of pockets like a plane ticket, for example. So we were able to go and see and do a lot that we otherwise would never have been able to do had it not been for Premier offering those opportunities. And so it is a great motivation, I believe, for really moving into leadership, because it will allow you the opportunities that you might not otherwise have. I mean, I was teaching chemistry. That's my background. And so I got a chemistry degree. I mean, I knew coming out of high school exactly what I wanted to do. I was sharing with a gal last night who didn't like chemistry in college, and I was saying, I've always felt like whether someone likes or dislikes chemistry has everything to do with the teacher of the subject, especially in that topic. Well, Fred and I were blessed with an amazing, and he's still amazing, science teacher named Jerry Waters, and I came out of high school knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I got a chemistry degree with the College of Education, and I went out and I taught chemistry. And so having that background and being a chemistry teacher, in Florida, chemistry teachers get paid very different than teachers in Texas. And it's higher here, is my point, depending on the school district that you're in. But on a teacher salary, to be able to go on an 8-day Mexican Riviera cruise, to be able to go to Washington, D.C. back in 2009, to be able to go to Chicago in 2007, to be able to go to all of these places that we have been able to go, that just would not have happened to be able to stay in the places that we've been able to stay as a result of our affiliation with Premier. That's definitely a great thing. Okay, let's turn the corner for a second and tell me some things that you think are your greatest challenges right now. So what are your greatest challenges in your business? Now, I know some of you are going to be fearful of actually speaking truthfully because you say, they're going to think I'm being negative. But are challenges reality? Right? I mean, it is part of our world. And part of being able to overcome challenges is we have to recognize them, and we have to be willing to admit that we're having them. And then we can talk practically about what do we do about them. So what are some challenges that you feel like you're facing right now in your business? Wanda.
Well, with the way the world has gotten, with everything being at the fingertips,
Okay.
we've gotten away from picking up the telephone and actually speaking to people and then getting out and being face to face. And I think for me, especially now that we've just moved again, that is a challenge.
Okay, so what Wanda is saying is that in our technological world, we tend to get out of the habit of picking up the phone and calling people and, and having that direct line of contact. I'm going to share with you a little bit about something that I've observed and have adjusted where Fred is concerned in his business. So really, in reality, what I'm doing right now in Premier is I work Fred Shots full time and I work Premier part time. But for Fred Shots, what I do is I take care of all of his follow-up, all of his scheduling, all of the invoicing, all of the bookkeeping, all of that's part of what that I take care of, as well as assisting on site depending on who the client is. I'm out here pretty much every time he comes out to Haven. And what I've noticed, we have an online scheduling system, okay, where people can click a link, see our menu of services, and they can schedule an appointment online. Now, for very loyal and recurring customers, it is very easy for them to click that link. They know the quality, they know what they're going to get, they know what to expect, and they can schedule an appointment without ever talking to me. I just had one of those happen yesterday. But for other people, because this is something new we've added in, if I've never had a conversation with them and I email them the link with all of the answers to their questions, and they've asked for an email, right? I'm less likely to see them schedule than when I pick up the phone and they hear my voice and I'm able to communicate all of the unspoken things all the things not spoken by reading a menu of services. You know, things like, Fred is different from other photographers because it's the experience, it's the overall experience of the session, not just the end result. The end result is good, but it's getting you to look your best because most people hate having their photo taken. And so that direct line of communication is very, very important. I'm giving you the example for Fred shots because I want you to understand how important a voice-to-voice or face-to-face is in your Premier business. Super important. Let me give you an example of something that I did when we moved that's very practical, that I think really speaks to that face-to-face. When we moved from Florida to Texas, we had built our business for 9 years in Florida. So we had an amazing, I probably had at that time 5,000 plus customers in my Hood and House program. I never had less than 60 shows in a year. I was always sponsoring 5, 7, 9 to 10 a year. So we had a very thriving business. We didn't move because our business wasn't where we needed it to be, okay? There are a lot of reasons for why we moved, but most importantly, it was because we were both self-employed and we had the ability to move and take photography with us. So we get to Texas, and as much as I tried to have shows scheduled prior to getting here, that none of them panned out because they'd never met me face to face. There was no real relationship there. We came here with 0 on our calendar. We had no friends and no family that lived here we had friends who were already in Premier, but they're not going to be doing shows for you. You can't rely on them to, for that. So it was all from ground zero, nothing, okay? You got to go out and meet people, you've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to build relationships, and you've got to get shows on your calendar. Now, lest you think that I was super awesome about that, you would be wrong. Because there were those moments. There were all kinds of things I did not anticipate about moving. The depressive thoughts of, I don't want to. Like Fred finding me in the floor of the closet because he was like, you got to go out and get your nails done because you got to go out and meet people. And I'm thinking, I don't want to go out. I don't want to put stuff on. I don't want to put jewelry on. I just want to sit here and cry. And I was. He came into the closet and I was crying in the floor of the closet. And, he is wearing, I don't know, some of his more like gym shorts, because it's more of the elastic waistband. They're blue. He still has them. And he probably had one of those moments of like, oh my goodness, my wife is crying in the floor of the closet, and Premier was like Premier at that time was our only source of income, okay? And I can remember him to this day because he's a funny guy and he's thinking, if I can get her to laugh, we can move beyond this, right? Like we can get over, And so he does that whole pull his shorts up, like, what I call coach level. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like coach level. And he's like, all right, Elizabeth, I need for you to get into the game, And so I don't think he said there's no crying in baseball type thing, right? Because he's more sensitive than that because he is trained in the 90s after all. But, I can remember kind of chuckling about that and making myself get out and go out. But it wasn't easy. Everything was lifestyle. Everything was, you're meeting those people and you're having to talk to them and try to schedule shows and you really just have, it's constant output, constant output, constant output. So here's why most people shy away from constant output. Because constant output will drain you, okay? And people get to a place where they feel very drained, very empty, very dry, and unless they are being refreshed, they will give up quickly. And so part of the key of being able to constantly output in order to have your business where you want it to be, you have to be connected into a refreshing, unending source. For me, that is the Word. Just this morning, I was in Psalm 63 that starts with, "Oh God, you are my God, and earnestly I seek you. I will seek you in the morning." And it talks about how I'm going to seek you in a land that is dry, where there is no water. And so in the journey of, where you're going to go in your premier business, or maybe it's in your marriage, or maybe it's in your parenting, there are going to be seasons where you feel like you are in the desert, it is dry, and there is no water. At that point, from whom are you seeking refreshment? Because people around you will never be enough to refresh you. God will always have an unending supply, though, of that refreshment for you through His Word, through your time spent with Him. So practically speaking, what were some ways that I was getting face-to-face with people once we moved here? Part of that looked like I sell about 90% of all my jewelry right off the table immediately, okay? Instant gratification in the Metroplex. People might drive in from all over. 29 miles could take a full hour to drive just because the traffic, construction. There's never-ending construction. There will always be construction because we'll always be outgrowing the roadways that we have. I thought I knew what it was like to live in a city, being in the Tampa, Florida area. Yeah, no. Totally different than being in the Metroplex. And I love it. I actually love living here. But now I truly understand better what it's like to live in a metro area. But it's just easier for hostesses to not have to worry about trying to deliver jewelry. Now, I'm excited because they're talking about this e-commerce that's coming in July. And so prayerfully, part of that is going to be drop ship, where people can pay to have it shipped directly to them for folks that it's not feasible to do what I'm getting ready to share with you. But I started selling pretty much everything that I could right out of my display. Now, the beautiful thing about that means I always have new jewelry. They're always getting new jewelry. Do you know the last time I actually had to clean my jewelry is? Literally years ago, because it's always a constant turnover in my jewelry, okay? So it's always new, it's always fresh, that people are being able to see and to take with them. Now, what that means is the hostess, and there are going to be things that need to be, everything gets reordered, right? You see, I sell it off the table, and it's going to be reordered. So what I say to my customers is, listen, I give you the option for instant gratification. You can take it with you. What you need to know is that in order for our hostess, Wanda, to get credit, this all is going to be, I'm going to be ordering it regardless, which means Premier charges a $4 shipping and handling fee. And so I'm still going to include that on your order because that's how Premier calculates all of the hostess's free jewelry. If you would rather, I'm happy to order the piece for you. That's how I say. I always give it, because, right, if I'm going to order it, they're going to be paying $4 regardless. So if they take it with them, I need for them to understand I'm not just trying to charge you something that you shouldn't have to pay. You're going to have to pay. It has to be paid regardless. So as long as you're upfront about that, people don't have an issue with that. Are you with me? So I order the show. All shows, with very few exceptions, get shipped to me. I pull out everything that I sold off my table, and yes, I note that on all of my order forms so that I don't make mistakes. So I'll show if you ordered 4 items, if there are 4 items on your order form, you took 3, one we ordered, let's say a ring in your size, I have OT for off table on the top 3, and then on the ring, I know that that's what I still need to get to you, okay? So I pull everything out that people have taken with them, and now I go and see my hostess. I schedule a time. Hey, I've got your jewelry, and then my goal is a face-to-face delivery. Whether it's at her job, whether it's at her home, whether it's at a mutual place where we see each other, I want more face-to-face. Because see, when you don't know people and you're trying to build relationship, every face-to-face opportunity is an invaluable connection with that person. That we're not talking about business just in the moment. I'm talking about, you got to think long view, business for years to come. That's the value of really cultivating face-to-face opportunities. Now, if I have a hostess that she needs help, she's single mom, working 2 jobs, got kids with activities, she might need help with delivery. I had one hostess where she was out of town. Her husband was having a procedure done on his eyes. They were out of state. Her show was going to come in. I didn't want it sitting on her front porch because everyone in that case had ordered because of the distance we live from each other. So what we did is I had it all sent to me, and I took one afternoon and I hand delivered every single person's jewelry. Now, what I do when I hand deliver jewelry to people like that is I take it out of the plastic bags that Premier packages it in, and I put it in those fun bags you can get from the incentive store. Whether it's the zigzag, now they have these fun plaid, there's zebra, there's leopard. I put it in there. I put one of my business cards in there, and I will usually put some kind of short little thank you note in there just to make it fun. But again, it's that face-to-face. Remember, I realize that's not feasible for the full-time working Premier jeweler, depending on what your schedule looks like. Remember, these are ideas. You have to work in what works for you, and you need to catalog. Even if it doesn't work for you, you're going to have a jeweler in your downline that this might serve them well. So that would be an example of really valuing the face-to-face, picking up that phone, and really directly connecting with people. Okay, what's another challenge that you would say that you have in your business? Time. Okay, give me more. What do you mean?
Just fitting everything in.
Okay, fitting everything
Job,
in.
Premier, children, husband, all those other things that go with that. And
Right.
finding the time to put everything where it needs to be.
Okay. So time in the overall aspect. I'm married. I've got a job. I've got kids. I've got Premier. Where do I fit it all in? Okay. So I think that's probably a question that at some point everyone has, because have you ever had that moment of there's not enough time? Okay, so I've got several things that I would in terms of how I would respond to that. I think the first is that you have to work your business in your own lane and not try to be working your business in someone else's lane, because the amount of time that you have is different from the amount of time that the person who's running next to you has in terms of working their business. Your circumstances and the amount of time that you have might be more limited for a variety of reasons than someone that you see doing way more shows or seemingly committing a whole lot more time than you. So it's very important that we run in the lane that God has given us. God understands our circumstances, our dynamics. He understands who we are. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. He knew us before he knit us in our mother's womb. So he is intimately familiar with everything about us. And so it's important that we are allowing the Lord to direct what we do and how we do it. And I think this is a real challenge right now, not just in Premier, but in a lot of other companies as well, is that on Facebook, we see people posting and talking about, oh, I've done this, and I gave this, and I was here, and I did this, and I'm traveling here, and I'm doing this. And we think to ourselves, man, she's killing it. She's doing all this stuff. I should be doing more, or maybe I should be doing that. And we get less focused on what God has for us, and we start trying to live the life that this other person has going on when we don't have the dynamics that is in. We don't even know what those dynamics are. We know only what they allow us to see through a very narrow lens on Facebook. And what I would say as an overall whole of social media in general is that most are making it look better than it really is. Okay? They're making it look better than it really, really is. So I would caution you about that. We got to run in our own lane. We've got to run the race that God has set out before us, not before other people. Secondly, we've got to look at, for what purpose did God give us Premier? Okay? For what purpose? Okay, for the woman whose purpose it is to supplement the income, then we've got to look at how much income is that and what is required for me to accomplish that, okay? Because this is the way in which I think about it. Let's say it's $500 a month. That's the financial impact that Premier is needing to make in your family. Just a fun little fact I remember reading is that most families who have a need to declare bankruptcy could avoid bankruptcy with an extra $500 a month. Okay, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a huge amount. And so let's take that $500 a month. That could help someone to not have to consider bankruptcy. You know, in today's world, because, we're not supposed to talk possibilities or numbers, I'm just going to give you my own. Okay, and all results may vary. Just saying. So I know that with my averages that I'm going to need to do, in order to make $500 a month safely, I need to do at least 3 events, whether it's Facebook, in person, whatever it is, at least 3. If I want to be safe, it's 4. But ideally, it's way more than that. I'm just giving you, just where you're making sure that you're hitting that mark. And so that's the case. Now, here's what I know, because, I have a junior who is working at a restaurant, and he's making $7.50 an hour, and I can look at how many hours does he have to work in order to earn $500. He's going to have to work 4 to 5 nights a week, all month long. So we're talking 15 to 20 nights a week, 20 nights a month, in order to earn $500. Now, if that were my reality, I would have to adjust the dynamic in my home in order to make sure that the financial need is met. In Premier, you could look at, let's say for me, it's going to be 3 to 5 nights a month in order to meet that reality versus 15 to 20 nights a month to meet that reality. So the question is then to sit down with my family and to say, here's what we have to work on in order to meet that reality. Here is what that looks like. It's at least 1 training a month, and it's 3 to 5 times where I need to be showing my jewelry, okay? So what we've learned to do in our family is it started before that when the boys were super small. Fred and I had a weekly business meeting every Sunday night. Here's what the week looks like. Here's what the month looks like. I mean, back before smartphone days, I had a 90-day laminated calendar that went on the wall between our 2 desks. Everything personal and business went on that calendar so that Fred knew what was going on, I knew what was going on with him, and we would plan things out. And then we would sit down proactively every Sunday and we would look at, what does that look like? What needs to happen for us to work this out? And we did that and are still doing that. We don't keep it just for Sundays. Now what we do is we incorporate our boys into that. So before Anthony got his job, we were having meals 3 to 4 times a week at the kitchen table, sitting down, no phones, no television, eating a meal, having conversation. Now that he's working, we don't get that as often, so I covet it. Like yesterday, we all had lunch together because that's when we could fit in our family meal. So we all sat down and had lunch together. And not only do we go, okay, so guys, let's talk about what's happening this week. Here's where mom and dad are tomorrow. Here's what's happening on Sunday. tell me, Anthony, what's your work schedule? What do you have going? We have a business meeting so that we can work that out as a family. No matter how old your kids are, if they are still in the home, they need to be part of that business meeting so that they are a part of what makes your family work. So that's another way to manage your time, is bringing the family in that and being in agreement specifically with you and your husband about how much time you're spending and how you're investing, how you're investing your time. In other words, even if you're spending only 3 to 5 nights a month doing Premier, but not a single night a month having a date night with your spouse, you are going to create a chasm between you and your spouse. And he will feel like he is second to Premier, not because in reality that he is, but because his perception is his reality. I just want to say that again. A person's perception is their reality. Whether it's true, whether you really feel that way, like you as the jeweler, you might not think that, but if your spouse's perception is that, that's his reality. And I want to encourage you, be sensitive to that. Be sensitive to that. So it's important that no matter how many nights you're deciding to work Premier, that you also have said, you know what, my spouse is a priority. When are we going to actually go out and have a date night or have time together? Your children need to be a priority. You know, when am I going to show my support? Whether it was the spring football game that we went to on Tuesday so that we could watch Samuel play. Anthony was having to work. Or it's the concert the week prior, or it was going to register for band on Saturday, whatever it was, we've worked that into the schedule so that they also feel prioritized as well. Now, do we always get it right? Oh, okay, everyone do this with me. See, this is called NASCAR no, right? You get that, right? Like, because in NASCAR, all you do is look left to right, right? Okay, versus rocket ships, yes. Okay, so we don't always get it right. So here's the thing. I want you to learn a very important phrase that has been super, super valuable in my life. God knows my heart. You say that. God knows my heart. Oh, you got to say it again because I need to hear a little bit more oomph in that. God knows my heart. You see, here's the thing. If God knows your heart, then you can trust that He desires for you to know His will and to help you in walking in His will. Isaiah 30:21 says that you will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, whether you turn to the left or you turn to the right. And so God knows your heart. And so you've got to trust that God knows your heart, but that doesn't keep you from any responsibility of the choices you make. What that means is you want to be sensitive to God's leading in making adjustments in your course in order that, because God knows your heart, He can work in and through you in the lives of the people that are around you. Okay? That's important. Now, let me address this issue of time in that something that I heard Mr. Emmert say about the value of Premier and this philosophy, purpose, and plan, and really understanding the foundation on which Premier was built. And that is ministering, being in ministry, supporting ministry, allowing moms to be home, to have an active role in raising their children. It was designed for people who are in ministry to be able to have a supplemental income. It was designed for people who are in careers that maybe have a more limited ceiling of earning to be able to supplement or to add into their family's budget, to be able to take the vacation they would otherwise not be able to take, as an example. And so Premier was designed for that. So to the extent that we remind ourselves of the philosophy, purpose, and plan, honoring God enriching every life that we touch, serving, expecting nothing in return, that will, of all things, help to guide how we spend our time so much better than if our sole focus is, I need to make some money. I need to make some money. That will send you into the desert feeling parched and dry and that there is no water, because that is a very narrow view of what Premier can do. When you have a broader, more visionary view, like Joan and Andy, and in terms of how they started this company, it fuels you differently. And so let me give you some practical examples. When our boys were younger and we were flying out, whether it was to rally or out for a Haven retreat, we would always tell them, Mom and Dad are going to not only be poured into, but to invest into the lives of other people, okay? And we would come home and we would share with them what God did during our time, whether it was at Haven or at Rally. I can remember coming home, there was a Haven retreat that we had here in 2008. We had 6 women at our retreat pray to receive Christ. Like 4 of them up at the cross on the last night. So we came home and we're like boys, we can't. So Anthony was 8 and Samuel was 6. We can't wait to tell you what God did at Haven. And so we're sharing with them about the work of the Lord and what He was doing. We were constantly trying to keep them ministry focused as well. This isn't just about providing income. It's about so much more. You give a broader vision for your kids about why you're doing Premier. If your husband's not actively engaged with you by going to training and things like that, you also want to be able to give that broader vision of what Premier is all about, because it really will help to guide you in how you use your time as well. So that's it. By the way, we never took on we tried, and then we were like, this doesn't work for us. And our boys don't really like it when we go someplace and we try to figure out what can we get them when we've gone someplace to bring back home. Because, parents, you kind of feel guilty, right? You left them. You just need to let them know you were thinking about them when you really hadn't thought about them. You're in the airport trying to figure out what you're going to buy for them to bring them home. So we were like, you know what? This is not, they don't want another t-shirt, okay? So we would come back home, we would celebrate what God had done, and then they each would have let's say $20. We'd go to Target or Walmart, and they could go to the toy section, and they could pick out whatever they wanted. That was their way of celebrating with us. Anytime that we got profit sharing, as a senior leader, they engaged in profit sharing, because you're a part of making sure that Mom and Dad can do what they do. So you also share in the profits. When Fred and I are in a crazy season of photography where, we've got group after group after group, or it's go, 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 we engage in profit sharing, because the boys are a valuable part of the team, whether it's continuing to keep things going at the house, making sure they're doing what they need to do. We have, it's not all the time, but we have profit sharing with them as a result of that. So make it a family business. Super, super, I think, important that you make it a family business, that you integrate them into your time, because then the cool part is when you start making it a family business, now making it all work, they become valuable hands and feet in your business, stamping catalogs, order forms, creating hostess packets. We have a driver going to the post office, taking deposits to the bank. That it's just a way to make it all work. That just all of these little things. And then the last thing I would say, nooks and crannies. Nooks and crannies. Here's a simple thing. You got people to call, you got to go to the grocery store. Drive to the parking lot of the grocery store and have set the goal, I'm going to make 5 calls before I walk in to get groceries. Because you have your list there, obviously. Make your 5 calls. Make your 5 contacts. Even if it's text messages or Facebook messages, all of that can be done on our smartphones now. Do it before you ever walk into the grocery store. Then, even if you've left messages while you're in the grocery store, that gives time for those to hit, people to hear them, possibly respond. But that's a nooks and crannies. You're just working it in where you can work it in. You're finding those brief little moments of where you can work it in. One thing that I would think is important of balancing is you need to build in silence into your life. Okay? There are two main times where I have silence built into my life. And you might be going, well, why silence? That's not calling people. In order for you to have refreshment, you've got to disconnect from the craziness that is our world. You need for your brain to think about less. You need to create white space, open space for God to speak to you, and for you to know the people to call, for you to know the people that He wants you to text, for you to actually think about the people that He has already prepared their hearts and minds to respond yes to you. But see, we get so busy kind of creating the list and doing the do that we don't give God space to actually direct us to whom we should be contacting. So you've got to have some silence so that you can actually hear the still, small voice of the Lord. Even Elijah, when he was in despair, and God's like, Elijah, why are you here? And he's like, I'm the last one left. They're all dead. And, they want to kill me, and I would just rather die. And, of course, first God tells them, I have reserved a remnant who have not bowed down to Baal. But then it was, I want you to go into the crevice of this rock, and I will present myself. And, first it was the wind, and of course, it's got to be, the blessed rain. And then it was the kind of more like an earthquake. No, ultimately it was that still very small voice. So you've got to build that in. So my two, when I get ready. So makeup, hair, there is no television, there is no radio, there is no conversation. Like normally I try to get ready before anybody else is up because I want that silence. The other time that I build in silence is when I'm driving in the vehicle by myself. Now, yes, I do use some of that drive time for the purpose of making phone calls, but I always try to reserve a portion of every drive time where all I'm doing is driving in silence. And I can think about what I'm thinking about. I can be listening for the Lord. Keep a dry erase marker on your bathroom counter. If God drops someone into your mind while you're getting ready, you need to write them on your mirror. The nice thing about a dry erase marker is you can wipe it off really easily. But when God drops things in your mind, it could be something that maybe you forgot to do. And He drops it into your mind and you go, oh, I never did that. Write it on your mirror as a reminder so that you don't forget it again. But you got to build in white space, okay? And that really will give God opportunity to speak into you and really guide and direct you in when I say, please hear my heart when I say He'll guide and direct you in more meaningful ways. What I'm saying there is that we live in a culture of busy, but busy does not always translate into meaningful. Just like scrolling Facebook and clicking like or love or wow translates into deep relationship. It doesn't. Building deep relationships is coming to things like this and hearing the testimony, which I've had the privilege of hearing, for example, of a Chris Emmert, where you learn more of the depth of a person, the realities of their life story, of how God has worked in that and what He's doing through that. That's building depth of relationship. Like and clicking and even maybe a woohoo or a comment, that is not depth of relationship. Do not confuse those two. And so I'm going to encourage you this. One of the best ways that you can really build in some, whether it's face-to-face or voice-to-voice, and even in thinking about your time, the short time that you spend on Facebook, if someone really stands out, there's a need how about rather than commenting, you send a direct text, or you write a card, or something that is more personal than just clicking like. That is a way to work on building in depth of relationship, okay? Anything else? Challenge that you want to share before I go to, I actually do have an outline, but just kind of getting through some of these first. Any challenge? Yes, sir. Motivating your downline to do stuff. Okay, I just heard Elizabeth Draper speak on this in a conference call that she and Randy did on Wednesday. And, I could not, really her response was so true, and I believe it to be true as well. That even when I was getting my degree, I was part of an honors teacher program that, would teach us, it was in the early days before you heard phrases like positive mantras, and have you ever heard that, right? There are people who make a lot of money teaching people positive mantras. But we had some of that when I was going through that program. And I'm not saying that there's no place for them, okay? But speaking a positive mantra is more of an extrinsic, it's outward versus an intrinsic, okay? Just because, so let me give you an example. I could have a positive mantra of, I am going to be the best opera singer in all the world. I believe that I can. I have the voice that I want to do that. I'm going to be a great performer. People are going to love me. I can say all of these positive things. Will that make me the best opera singer, operatic, what's the appropriate thing, in all the world? No. Is that rocket? It's not a rocket ship's yes? You can't get you. No, it's going to be a NASCAR no. You're supposed to kind of laugh. Right, thank you. Thank you. It is. It's all good. You can totally laugh out loud. Listen, just because you say something positive does not make it a reality in your life. If you do not, so this is something that we heard, this really cool phrase. You can try to produce fruit without root, but it's not going to be good fruit. If you don't address the root issues of what's going on in your heart and in your mind, your fruit will not be a true reflection of what God intends for it to be. Okay, because God is about authenticity. God is about you reflecting Him for the world to see. At least for those, and really that is for everyone. For those who are already in relationship with God, we should be growing closer to Him so that we are more of a mirror image of Him. For those who have yet to enter into a relationship with God, His first and biggest priority is that no one should perish, but that all men would have eternal life. And so His first and most priority is that they would come into a relationship with Him. And then guess what? After that, it's become more like Him and reflect the light of Christ for all those to see. So it's important that we are, continuing to keep that focus. So what did Elizabeth Draper say? She said, going back to how do you motivate people, that you've got to motivate the heart over the head. And in our culture, we want to do a lot of motivating the head. Motivating the head would be, for example, I'll give you $25 if you make 25 calls. That's an extrinsic motivator. I will give you $25 if you make 25 calls. Hey, minimally, whether you get a yes or a no, you're going to earn $1 a call. You're giving them an extrinsic motivation. The challenge with extrinsic motivations is if we've not addressed the root of why they don't want to make the call, once you remove the money, the likelihood of them making the call goes right back down to almost nothing. Okay, so let's talk about a reality, folks. Premier, over a full year, did a lot of extrinsic motivators. You do shows, you sponsor people, you're going to get free jewelry. Next time around, you do shows, you sponsor people, you're going to get a lot of free jewelry. I think we did 3 cycles of that, and guess what? People were working. And then when the extrinsic motivator didn't happen, What did people stop doing? Working. This is the challenge with extrinsic motivation. We've got to address the intrinsic nature of people. And do you know who was so absolutely, stunningly on target with that? Was Andy and Joan Horner. Andy constantly, you know, and I love, I mean, it was so funny because I remember, I've heard it so many times, you know, philosophy, purpose, and plan, love Jesus, you know, go USA. I mean, that really is, so true of how it, I know. I mean, we've heard it. But what did Andy constantly do? He was constantly reminding us of the foundation of God, the foundation of Premier. Why do you work this business? He never talked about make money, book, sell, recruit, book, sell, recruit. No, he was always about honor God in what you do, enrich every life you touch, serve expecting nothing in return. These are the foundations on which you can build your life and your business. Joan, what was her focus? Her focus was on seek the Lord, be in His Word. She was telling those stay-at-home moms, when your son or daughter comes pulling on your leg, you stop what you're doing and you respond to them. She wasn't telling people to sponsor more or to book more shows. She was telling them, utilize this business so that you can be the mom that God has called you to be. You can be available to your kids. Joan was constantly bringing us back to the Word. Back to the Word. Think about it. Every regional rally, for those of you who have been in long enough, her message was on the verse of the year. And how do we live that out? At National Rally, it was gems from Joan. And I guarantee you it had nothing to do with booking a show or sponsoring a jeweler, except in the aspect of if you are living out the biblical principles on which we are founded, you will book shows and you will sponsor people, but it will be for the express purpose of honoring God, enriching their life, and serving. And so we've got to get back to the intrinsic motivators that have brought Premier through the last 30 years. And we've got to stop whining about not getting the extrinsic motivators that the culture tells us we should crave. And I'm telling you, Chief, right here, I have to remind myself, why do I work this business? I work this business because I want to honor God, enrich, and serve. Yes, do I need to make money? Absolutely, we need to make money. But if I make making money my primary motivation, I will start feeling dry and parched very quickly. Why? Because you have 1 month. So let me give you an example of how if I'm not careful, that derails me. So it was March and April, people were doing that 500, get to register, for National Rally. So after March, so first of all, let me just say, January, stellar month. February, awesome month. March, it was coming down a little bit, but I was in the running for the top 500. So I was like, yes, I wanted to earn it just because it's a great model for our people to show that I'm working, right? So in March, I submit 6 shows, but my retail average was really low. So for like 6 shows, I want to say I ended up retailing like around $1,700. Okay, you can do that math really quickly. That's not a great average. And so I ended up not making the list for the 500. So see, when money is your strong motivator, what happens? You have a dip and you start thinking things like, it's not worth it. I'm not making any money. Why am I doing this? I don't want to make any calls because I'm going to have low retail shows. What's the point of that? I could be doing so much more with my time. You start allowing your enemy to get into your head and start whispering lies to you that if you are not careful, they will take you off course. Versus if you make your intrinsic motivator honoring God, enriching lives, serving people, whether your retail is high or your retail is low, whether you've sponsored a lot or you're in a drought, you can know that God knows my heart, and that my heart is to serve and to honor and to enrich. And God honors that. Now, it might not be in the way that we want, but God does honor it. And that's what keeps us moving regardless of what's going on in the world around us. And so, intrinsic, motivating the heart of people. We've got to get back to the message of the philosophy, purpose, and plan. Do you know it? Could you, if you were put on the spot in 30 seconds or less, could you communicate the philosophy, purpose, and plan of Premier with passion that would make someone want to go, wow, I want to be a part of something like that? Because you see, I think we've gotten more into the book, sell, recruit, and less on the philosophy, purpose, and plan. And that's part of why we're seeing some of the stuff that we're seeing. So I'm going to challenge you, like what's been on my heart lately is working in the spirit of Joan Horner. God first, family second, career third. Do I believe you can have a thriving, growing business with career third? You bet I believe that. Do I think it's easy? No, I do not. Do I believe that God is able? Yes, I do. For those of you in relationship with the Lord, whether you're here or you're watching online, what we know is that God is able to supernaturally stretch your time, your energy, your resources. Listen, if he can take a widow who is like ready to make her last meal for her and her son, and he sends Elijah on in there, and he prolongs her oil and flour for them to be able to eat through the remainder of the drought, okay, with no refill, like you don't hear of refills going on in the scripture there. If God is able to supernaturally stretch her resources, guess what? He can supernaturally stretch your resources. He can make it extend further and more than you could ever even imagine. That includes your time, your energy, financial, your money. I mean, God is able. What is impossible with man is very possible with God, because nothing is impossible for God. And so, of all of those things that you said, if I could just bring you back to God is able. He is able. He is able. He knows your heart. And we need to learn to work from our heart. Let me give you these 3 things that I actually made some notes for to share with you. You probably want to hear that. Colossians 3:23. So you probably should know that I have a whole training written for this theme. Write your story, about the 6 words that if we allowed God to etch on our hearts, that it could transform your life. If you want to actually watch that, you can go to my YouTube channel, Glitzy Gems, GLITZYGEMS, and you can actually look that training up and watch it. The theme that kept coming back for you, though, because I try to allow the Lord to really lead for whatever the group is in front of me, is a theme of work. This whole idea of work. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever it is, work at it with all of your heart, as though working for the Lord and not for men. And so that is kind of the foundation of the 3 things I want to share with you. First, we need to work willingly. Work willingly. It says, whatever you do, work at it. Whatever you do. So for all of us, we have in common this thing called Premier. That's part of our whatever. And then in each of your stories, it could be your marriage, your parenting, it could be full-time job, it could be maybe the pursuit, whatever your husband is doing. Like for me, my whatever includes working full-time with Fred, as well as working Premier, as well as being mom, as well as, trying to make sure I'm fulfilling that role as wife and keeper of the home and all of those things. So it's whatever you do, work at it. Okay, so that means we have to work willingly. So in other words, I kind of started with this a little bit, is that when we wake up in the morning, this whole idea of willingness, that word willingness actually means, oh, get this phrase, cheerfully consenting. Cheerfully, not what I've seen in our 16-year-old, oh, I really hate having to work. Like, I really want to be self-employed, right? Because he sees his mom and dad. You know, all of these years we've been home self-employed. But we finally came to the place where we were like, in order for our boys to really understand the value of working for yourself, they need to go and work for someone else. You want to understand the value of working for yourself? You go work under the thumb of someone else. What you wear, what time you arrive, how long you work, and then now with smartphones, they want you to answer emails at all times, responsive at all times. You want to appreciate the opportunity that we have to wake up every day and work willingly, work for someone else. So cheerfully consenting to do what is necessary in our business. It's choosing to work without reluctance. So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind. What is an area of reluctance for you in your business? What in your business is an area where you immediately think, I am reluctant to do that? Working without reluctance. When we moved here, oh man, it was, I told you it was hard. It was hard. I tell people moving was the best thing and the hardest thing that we have ever done. The best and the hardest. I was way overconfident. The Drapers told us it'll take 12 months. I was like, 6 months. You know, really, by the time, once we got out here, I was like, 6 months, it's gonna be 6 weeks, we're gonna be going. Like, I am Elizabeth Mahusay. Yeah, no, it was not that way, I assure you. I was used to 6 to 8 shows a month, making $1,500 to $2,500 a month. I'm barely scraping $200 to $300 a month because every show is a lifestyle show. People don't know you. You begin to feel hesitant and insecure about your own ability because things aren't going the way that you want. It's challenging. So one of the areas where I was reluctant is setting my jewelry up in things like a nail salon. I just kind of had that's beneath me. I'm just being real with you, okay? I was very reluctant to do that. Bottom line is, I did not want to do it. And I as much told God that. I don't want to have to do that. And so in the first 5 months of being in Texas, things were not happening the way I needed them to happen. And coming into June, I was like, I needed to earn some money. If nothing else, I needed to make sure that I was meeting my CV minimum to get a commission check, because the commission check was important for making our life work, you understand, okay? And so I remember going in to get my nails done because Fred was always adamant, you have to go, no matter what. He said, we will do whatever we have to do. You've got to continue to get your nails done because you need to be where you can meet people. And he said, you got to make sure that you look at a level of people wanting to do business with you. So I was in there getting my nails done, and I can remember going to myself, I need to ask her if I can bring my jewelry in and set it up. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I was like a little crybaby about it. And so I'm sitting there, and you have that flush up feeling where it's like you feel hot and your pits are sweating and you kind of have that clammy feeling, and you're like, so she's got my hands in front of me, and I'm like, I have this jewelry thing, so do you think it'd be possible that, I could set it up? I'm sure I wasn't making eye contact with her. And she's like, oh, well, we'll ask because, of course she's from, Vietnam or, so we've got limited, ability to speak, but the manager is a full English speaker. So the manager comes over and she talks to her, and she was like, well, sure, you can do that. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, that's done. And then I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to bring in my table and I'm going to set up my display. Oh, no. I come in, and there is no room for a table. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you can't have a table because, whatever it was that she was saying, the table wasn't going to work. And she told me, so I want you to imagine, like, that place where you sit at it and, like, your toes are under the light here, and then you put your hand under the little ledge for them to dry here? She's like, you can set it up on the top of that. Okay, so I was already not wanting to do this, right? So now, like, my whole plan is going out the door. Okay, so have you ever noticed that on the top side, it's like this wide, people, and about this long. You're not going to set up a lot. So I'm like, okay, oh, Lord, help me. I just didn't even I just wanted to go back to the vehicle and go home. And so ultimately, because there really was no space, what I did is I had one of those folios that you can get from the incentive store, because I always keep jewelry in, I was keeping jewelry in that. So I laid it up on top of there so that as ladies were there getting their toes dry or whatever, they could flip through it more easily. And so I had a couple of ladies there, and of course I made myself go to some people who were in the pedicure chair asking if they wanted to look at a catalog. I'm telling you, I felt like a peddler of fake stuff, I was like, this is just terrible. But here's what happened. 2 ladies ended up purchasing about $140 worth of jewelry. And so not only, did we earn some money, but this is really overwhelmingly what I felt like the Lord was communicating to me through that circumstance. Are you willing to be obedient? To do whatever it is that I've called you to do. And that's my challenge to you. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill what God has called you to do? Work willingly. Here's something that I've heard over and over again. We have to and I'm going to add the word willing in there. We have to willingly do what we've never done in order to get what we've never had. Willingly do what we've never done in order to get what we've never had. Rather than complaining about what you don't have, those watching online, actually try willingly doing what you've never done, because then through that you're able to get what you've never had. Work willingly. Secondly, work wholeheartedly. Work wholeheartedly. Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart. That's the foundation of work wholeheartedly. That word wholeheartedly actually is a preposition that denotes origin from or out of. I got that actually from a resource that I use regularly online called blueletterbible.org. It gives Greek and Hebrew meanings for words throughout the entire Bible, and I love it. It helps me to understand better what Scripture is saying. But that wholeheartedly, it denotes origin from or out of. So here's the thing. Your work needs to have origin in your heart. And this is what we're talking about. We're motivating jewelers. We got to motivate their heart, not their head. Because if we're going to work wholeheartedly, then we've got to work with all that we have that is in our heart. So what are you putting in your heart? If you're putting in your heart philosophy, purpose, plan, God, family, career, philosophy, purpose, plan, think about the amazingness of the message of Andy and Joan Horner. Philosophy, purpose, plan, God first, family second, career third. Those combined messages together is what laid the foundation for why Premier has been able to be what Premier has been all of these years. And so we've got to be putting that into our heart. We've got to own that. I would dare say that a lot of new jewelers who have been in less than a year don't even know what the philosophy, purpose, and plan is. And I'm saying to my own self, in saying that to you, I have not done what I needed to do to effectively communicate that well to even my new jewelers. So I am chief sinner among them all. Because I've been busy trying to meet needs and to, financially make our household run and all of those things that aren't bad. But if we are not investing into the heart of our people, philosophy, purpose, and plan, and God, family, career, then we are a part of the problem. I am a part of the problem. And it was just this week that I made a commitment to the Lord that every time I am out here, I am bringing this up. That philosophy, purpose, and plan, and God, and family, and career is what Premier was founded on, and we have to be the ones to take that into the future generation. Yes. It's up to us to do that. First to live it ourselves, and then to clearly communicate it any opportunity that God gives us. This is what it means to work wholeheartedly. And by the way, philosophy, purpose, and plan, and God, family, career, honoring God, enriching lives, and serving, that goes for anything. I don't care what you're doing. In your full-time job, you can desire to honor God, enrich lives, and serve people, and put God first and family second and career third. It doesn't matter what you're doing. That's the beauty of what Joan and Andy really put together. It's not just a Premier thing. It goes for anything. It's called successfully living the biblical model of what God intended for us. And I love that. Work wholeheartedly. It cultivates finding a deeper meaning in our work, and we need that. We've got to find deeper meaning in our work. That's what keeps us moving forward. And by the way, when we have deeper meaning in our work, one of the aspects that I think is necessary of work wholeheartedly is work hard. When's the last time you can really say, I have worked hard in my business? I'm talking about working when you don't want to work, working when you don't feel like working when you are under the weather, working hard at what you do. I'm not talking about working to the neglect of God or family, but I'm saying in the midst of that, when is the last time that you have said, man, I really worked hard at that? You see, when we're intrinsically motivated, we can work hard, and even though our bank account doesn't show tons of money necessarily, or we haven't sponsored 50 people, we can still lay our head on the pillow and know that God is pleased with my work. Because whatever you do, work at it with your whole heart, wholeheartedly. So work hard. Okay, let me give you the third thing. Work worthy. Work worthy. The teacher in me, I was trained by a mentor of mine on something called homiletics. And a lot of pastors like to use homiletics because it provides great memory hooks for you, right? Like everything I'm saying starts with a W, starts with work. And then the second word starts with a W. And the first two ended with L-Y, and I really wanted the third one to end with L-Y as well. So I tried to make worthily work, but didn't work. Worthy it is. So we're going to work worthy. What does that look like? So Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it. Say that with me. Whatever you do, work at it. That's the first part. Work willingly. Then it says, so let's repeat that again. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. That's the third phrase. So let's put all three of those phrases together. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. Then the last phrase that comes to work worthy is as working for the Lord, not for men. I'll add that on in a minute for you guys. As working for the Lord, not for men. You see, work worthy is always going to help motivate us when our work is for the Lord. and not for men. We will always fall short of man's expectation. And guess what? You will always fall short of your own expectation. And the challenge that we face in the issue of our pride is we don't like the fact that we fall short of other men's expectations, and we certainly don't like the fact that we fall short of our own. Is that only me, or can any of you relate to that? We don't like to fail. We don't like to fail. And so what will happen, either we will give ourselves crazy standards, or we will give ourselves such substandards to ensure that we don't fail, to make ourselves feel better. Or we just won't try because that's what keeps our ego where we need it to be. And so we've got to really be working for the Lord and not for men. Okay, so this is what I had written down. It's all about whom we are working for. So let's give me some. Are we working for others? See, if we're working for others, then what will happen is their disappointment in us can do a couple of things. It can make us mad. It can make us insecure. It can, it serves to deflate our ego. So when we're working for others, what ultimately we're doing is we're giving power. We're giving our power away to them to determine our state of mind. Okay, but what if we're working for ourselves? Right? Because we're self-employed, we work for ourselves, right? But if our whole motivation is about, I work for myself, then we get to what I just shared with you. Either we're setting these extraordinarily high expectations and we fall short, and now it begins to erode away our confidence, or because we're fearful of not succeeding, we just choose to set our expectations really, really low because now I can keep myself feeling good in that moment. Either way, those are not productive long term. And so it's for whom we're working. But if we're working for the Lord, He's always worthy of our work. Always. There's never a time, there's never a circumstance, there's never a time where God is not worthy of our work, which is why we should be working for the Lord and not for men. So here are some things that I would share about working for the Lord. When you are working for the Lord, you are working from His empowerment. I'm going to say it again. When you're working for the Lord, you are working from, very important preposition, His empowerment. Two passages of Scripture that really are meaningful to me regarding working from His empowerment. Ephesians 1:17, probably through about verse 21, where it says, "The God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, give to you a spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of Him, that the eyes of your understanding," that's important, we need understanding, "the eyes of your understanding would be enlightened, that you may know the hope of His calling, that you would know the glorious riches of His inheritance in the saints, that you would know," and this is the part here, "the exceeding greatness of His power for those who believe, according to the working of His mighty power," get this, the same power that He used to raise Christ from the dead. Let me give you the Elizabeth pared down version of that. God's power that He used to raise dead Jesus, really dead Jesus, fully had experienced death from the dead. Not only did Jesus walk, by the way, in that resurrected life, but then He ascended to the right hand of the Father. That power that God used to raise Him from the dead is available to you through Jesus Christ. What are you doing with it? If you have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you can work from that empowerment, but you must appropriate that power. God will not force it on you. He will not force you to work. But when you work for the Lord, you work from His empowerment. And let me tell you, you can do way more than you ever could ask or imagine, according to Ephesians 3:20. Why? Because it's not you doing it. It's God doing it in and through you. Because He is able to do far more than we can ask or imagine. That's the value. Those are the two scriptures, Ephesians 1:17-21 and Ephesians 3:20. When you're working for the Lord, you can work through adversity. adversity comes. Whether it's death of a spouse, whether it's moving, whether it's a business that has kind of run dry and it's time for you to restart it. You didn't have to move out of the area. You feel like you might as well have moved out of the area. And so now you have to pick it up and you have to start working it in that same way. You've got to take the next step. You've got to work through the adversity. And I'll tell you, we've had some adversity in our years of Premier. 2008, January 19th, Fred's stepmom of many years died. She had been diagnosed with colon cancer a month earlier and died a month later. In May of that same year, the senior pastor of our church, who was also a pilot, had some kind of crazy small plane accident. Both he and his son died in Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains there. In August, just before Fred's birthday, the choir director, our dear friend, baptized our boys, had a heart attack, died the next day, very unexpectedly. And then in December 2008, my best friend since high school, after 4 years of breast cancer, died. 4 major deaths in our life in 2008. And I'll tell you, we came into 2009 with that, God, we don't know what you have for us, because it puts things into perspective. Just like I'm sure you heard Chris share with the death of her, it totally rocks your world and how you perceive things and what's important and how you want to spend your time. And we basically started saying to Hank and Kelly, we're not sure that we're in Premier long term. God may be moving us in a different direction. Because it really kind of spun us up into, God, we want to do what you want us to do. We want to go where you want us to go. We want to be available because life is short. And what we do for you matters. And so you can work through adversity. But listen, because there was no clarity in that sense that I just shared with you, we kept working. I kept doing shows. I kept working to share the business. I kept sponsoring. Was it always exactly the way I wanted it? No, but I just kept doing the next thing, because unless you have that true clarity, you got to keep working, because God is always worthy of your work. So you can work through adversity. See, our challenge is we want to stop in the midst of adversity and get clarity on our adverse situation before we can start working Premier again. And have you ever considered that God knew you were going to have the adversity, and that by working Premier through the adversity, that's part of His plan for helping you be successful in and through the adversity? The very thing that we want to stop doing is exactly what God gave you to do to help you through those circumstances. So, man, we got to work through the adversity. Also, when you are working for the Lord, you can take one step of obedience at a time. I want to say that. I am a firm believer in one forward step of obedience at a time. One forward step of obedience at a time. I learned that through not time to tell you now of just how God really worked in us to move us from Florida to Texas, to take these stout, staunch, love the Florida heat and humidity and all of that. We're never leaving. Fred's a Gator graduate. I graduated from the University of South Florida. He also graduated from the University of South Florida. So we had no desire to leave Florida, and yet God worked in us to move us out of Florida. And now we tell people we'd never go back. That's what God does to you. He totally transforms you. But it's one forward step of obedience at a time. So I want to share with you a visual that God gave me. I was in the midst of teaching a women's retreat, and I was sharing Psalm 119, 105. Okay? I had this Bible in my hand. This is my Haven Bible. I set aside, this is the Bible that I always bring to Haven. When I prepare for Haven, I prepare out of this Bible. All of this right here, all of these are Haven trainings. I keep them with me all the time, because sometimes God might lead in a totally different direction, and I might pull something out from here. But I was in the middle of this women's retreat. I was sharing Psalm 119, 105, which says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." That's that passage of Scripture. And just like I'm holding it out now, I was holding it out then, speaking that verse. And this is the visual that came to my mind and I shared with them in that moment. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. Here are my feet. If I take one step, that one step and the length of this Bible out in front of me is about all I can do, right? Because of the length of my arm. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Our problem is we want God to illuminate 5 miles down the road. And God says, no, my grace is sufficient for this step, Elizabeth. And if you elevate my word, if you allow my word to be a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path, and take one forward step of obedience at a time, I will faithfully light your feet and light your path, and you will hear that voice behind you that says, "This is the way, walk in it." Whether you turn to the left or you turn to the right, this is the way. So thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. My challenge to you is to take one forward step of obedience at a time and stop worrying about what's going to happen 10 steps down the road. Because God's grace is sufficient in this moment. God will not give you grace in advance. He gives you grace in the measure that you need it, in the amount that you need it, and at the perfect timing that you need it. And so we need to take one forward step of obedience at a time. That is what allows you to go through the unknown and the uncertainty with confidence. Not because you're confident about exactly what's going to happen, but you're confident in what God is going to do on your behalf in that moment. That no matter what comes down the road, God is already there. No matter what has happened in your life, do you know what? God was there. Whether you saw him or not does not make him any less real in his presence in the past, in the present, and where he will be with you in the future. So we can move through uncertainty and unknown. When you work for the Lord, whatever the outcome, you can trust that God is in control. You see, you work worthy because you don't have to control the outcome. We want to control things, ladies, am I right? That's right, it drives our husbands crazy. Because we want to be in control. And oftentimes we want to control him too. We want him to say certain things and do certain things. Like Fred early on, I wanted him to load the dishwasher in a certain way. Drove him nuts. He's thinking, I just want to get it in there and turn it on and get it washed. And I'm thinking, no. Like if you put all the small spoons together, you just pick them all out, put them in the same slot, put all the big forks together, you take them all out, you put them in the same slot. I mean, like it would drive him nuts. Versus me just going, hey man, I'm really glad that you're putting dishes in the dishwasher. Chop, chop, let's get it done. Okay? And so we have got to understand that whatever the outcome, you can trust that God is in control. God is in control. He is in control. So it all comes down to work. Whatever you do, work at it. With all your heart. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. And I want to use the same phrase because I have multiple versions going on in my head. As working for the Lord, not for men. Those are our last two phrases. As working for the Lord, not for men. So let's all say Colossians 3:23 a couple of times. Now, if you want to really, truly anchor Scripture in your heart and mind, you need to be constantly saying the address of that Scripture. So we're going to start by saying Colossians 3:23. We're going to say the verse, and then we're going to repeat Colossians 3:23 at the end. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for men. Colossians 3:23. That's my challenge to you. That you will leave here with that scripture running in your mind. Whatever, God, you give me to do, I'm going to work at it. I'm going to work willingly. I'm going to work at it with all my heart. I'm going to work wholeheartedly. That as I'm working for the Lord, why? Because my work is worthy of the Lord. Not as working for men, because I will always disappoint man. But as I'm working for the Lord, I can trust God. I can trust God to be with me in the moment. I can trust that He was with me in my past. I can trust that He's going to be with me in my future. I can trust Him with the outcome. And when I choose to elevate His word as the lamp unto my feet and the light unto my path, I can take one forward step of obedience at a time. And the step that I said yes to God this week was that every time I'm out here, I will say, for Premier People, it is about the philosophy and the purpose and the plan of honoring God and enriching lives and serving every person that He brings into your path, and that you better make it about God first, family second, and career third, because when all is said and done, you will have lived and worked a business that has indeed honored God, and your work will have been worthy of the glory that is due His name. And guess what? In the process, other lives are going to have been deeply and meaningfully impacted as a result of you saying yes to Premier. I appreciate my time with you guys this morning. Thank you so, so very much.